Hello there, and welcome to Apilia Multimedia and The World Storm. The World Storm is an experimental creative project that began its life as a fantasy novel, but that's when I started thinking about audiobooks and what would happen if you tried to push that medium into the next dimension, into something that I like to call a video book. And so, as of September of 2021, you are watching right now the most definitive version of the first two chapters of The World Storm. Enjoy.
Untitled, the 17th century KC. In the twilight years of a feudal era, firearms arose to change warfare forever, a stage of history set for inexorable catastrophe. In the westlands of Untitled, there is a kingdom born not of divinity, but of defiance. It was once a homeland to Cardians, whose ancient glory declined until the Muson Empire swallowed them. Thus, the largest nation ever known enjoyed its apex, a time when tribute flowed like golden rivers across long tracts to the Emperor's throne. The frontiersmen and native remnants of the westlands, now but a remote territory, forged a new culture over the ruins of old Cardia. They grew to favor ingenuity over labor and loyalty over fealty. The Emperor was no one to them. In 1340, the Cardian philosopher Palatial petitioned his fellow Westlanders to sever ties with the Empire, and a separatist movement soon swelled. It fell to the imperial vicereine Lyra du Sol to put down the uprising, but instead she turned coat and sent an ultimatum to her emperor: sovereignty or war. It was a call to arms for the Westlands. Attack was imminent. At one renegade colonel's command, countless soldiers defected to the separatist cause and prepared to repel the impending attack. That colonel's name was Armarosk. Armarosk was born a commoner of mixed heritage. Orphaned as a teen, he joined the Muson army. He proved apt to military matters and earned rank in due course, but he served with pale ardor, for he disdained the corruption beyond his station. Thus, when the time arose, he seized upon the separatist cause unwavering. Within the first weeks of the rebellion, his initiative scored key early victories, and he swiftly earned the rank of general. Furthermore, his indomitable presence was a constant source of morale to the soldiers under his command, for he shared their dream of a new sovereignty in the Westlands. He was known to reward acts of courage with field promotions to knighthood, an authority he strictly did not possess. The fiercest fighting of the war occurred in the Solrothi Peaks, where Rosk took advantage of the mountainous terrain. There, no siege could dislodge his position, and his ambushers lied in wait at every turn. In the end, the Empire's war effort proved too great an expenditure to sustain. In 1345, Lady Lyra du Sol sued for peace. The Emperor accepted. New borders formed, and the aftermath brokered power in the Westlands. To the south, Lady du Sol declared herself Archduchess of a new aristocracy of Dusolia, and Palatial freed his ancestral lands of Palazea to the northwest. Meanwhile, in the northeast, Armarosk retained power through his loyal knights and militia. He styled himself the Lord Protector of a confederation, But his popularity outstripped his own ambition as the commoners heaped heroic praise upon him. An elected delegation coronated King Arma I in 1351, and so the Kingdom of Roska was born. Roska's capital city is situated in a valley less than a day's travel from the eastern border, where there stands an insurmountable cliff face from coast to coast like a wall. Surmised to have been built by the Lorna Titan Solroth himself, Solroth's Ridge was an obstacle to the history of mankind, whether in peace or war. For Roska's reign, it was a welcome barrier against an old enemy, fortified wherever traversable with garrisoned fortresses. For this, Roska is known as the Bulwark Kingdom in many tongues. Enmity and distrust endured between the young kingdom and its fatherland empire throughout the 14th and 15th centuries, a period of grudging coexistence pockmarked by minor wars. Bloodshed escalated during the Reconquest Wars of the early 16th century, the empire's vain bid to recover its former glory. A new weapon saw its dawn in those conflicts, the musket, a Dusolian invention which they proliferated through trade. However, Roska possessed neither the capital nor the clout to import them in great numbers, not even from their Dusolian neighbors. Next there came an uneasy peace, suspicious in its persistence for over 100 years. Roska recovered from the Reconquest but learned the wrong lessons as consequence. The kingdom adopted a hardline stance against guns on principle, decrying them as dishonorable. They even leveraged the Dusolians to cease all exportation of military firearms. Dusolia begrudgingly complied, but the sanction symbolized a growing rift. Roska and Dusolia had become like bitter neighbors, a friendship frayed by many slights over time. In the years leading to 1653, Roska stood conflicted, a nation that revered its military yet abhorred the inevitable gun, where to possess one was prohibited, yet sharp arms lay ready in every household, where any man would answer the call against the empire but feared an old ally may become the next enemy. Complacent minds failed to recognize Roska's existential risk. Their impotent bid to rein back inexorable advancement exposed a mortal weakness for whoever might exploit it. Rogan arose a full-fledged man by Western law the morning after his 16th birthday. He was ready as he would ever be to say goodbye to Soranold and depart on his rite of passage, a fortune-seeking journey across the kingdom of Roska. From the agrarian hill boroughs to urban Capsule Vale, the valley nestled in the furthest reaches of the Solrothi peaks. Rogan's birthday saw him gifted with every article he required and mark him a free man. His aunt and uncle gave him a young muscular riding reptor named Brenner, dark nut brown in color, calm in temperament, and raised from birth just for him. His father bought him a full set of leather riding gear, gloves, greaves, spalders, caps, stirrups, bridle, and saddle. He was most delighted by the parcel he received from Rogel, delivered all the way from his post in the capital, a well-crafted lance with a 6-foot shaft and steel spearhead. And take the King's Road up from the foothills. It's a toll-free way, so if anyone tries to collect from you, they're swindlers, yes, you mentioned that too. He unhitched Brenner from his post and stood before the first threshold of his adventure. He saw in his father's eyes a bittersweet pride, a sorrow of vicarious delight. If only our mother saw you now, and all along the way. Oh, I'm sure she's watched you from the stars. Oh, my boy. The father and son shared one last long embrace. I'll do something to make you proud, Dad, just like Rogel. You already have, Rogan. Now, don't linger, or I'll never let you go. Rogan mounted his reptor and gave one last farewell to his dear father as the beast began to stride, its 2 legs in tandem with his own.
A few neighbors wished him well from their doorsteps as he passed, and some village children followed him as far as the old Lorndor shrine. Silently, he prayed to his mother when her cairn came into view. In return, he felt her somber encouragement. The calm dawn proceeded as Rogan Tice rode northward. On Solstice 8th, Rogan arrived in Archway, the town at the foot of the Sarathi Peaks. Rogan knew the peaks only from description, illustration, or view from great distances away. Up close, their immensity daunted him when he stood in the shadows of rock-red towers and conical spires thrust skyward. 2 pillars remained of the town's namesake, a Cardian archway that marked the entry to the King's Road, the safest highway through the sheer terrain. With nervousness and resolve renewed alike, Rogan passed between the ruined guideposts and up the gradual incline of the wide, well-trodden road. Those sky-reaching stones defined Roska, and their protective terrain lent the country its nickname the Bulwark Kingdom. The weather was arid, desert-like, the hot air parched under the summer sun. Frequent shade under the high spires offered relief from the heat, as the road itself often dug into the mountainsides and hugged around their many curves. Reptor-backed travelers like Rogan afforded passage on suspended bridges spanned across the canyons above the deep crags below. Those vertigo heights stole Rogan's breath, not only for the view to a plunge, but for his knowledge that criders teemed in those abyssal cracks, crusty-shelled and 8-legged predators that hived within the very mountains. Roskins both feared and revered the crider, and rarely dared venture down between the mountains, lest they hunt or be hunted. If the King's Road had laid straight due eastward, it would have taken 12 days' travel or less to reach Capital Vale. But the path meandered and contorted in pursuit of a path of least resistance through an untenable landscape. For Rogan and Brenner, 12 days marked a rough quarter of the way through the peaks. Smaller roadways shot off this way and that, to and from tucked-away places, villages, quarries, hollows, even arable valleys and precious crater lakes. Rogan only learned what he heard of such places, for he did not detour from his path to Capital Vale, not even to shortcut his travels. Roadside brush, a snack for Brenner, was common enough, but the rain pools had all dried up. As such, every mountainside village, outpost, or lodge kept tall tanks and rationed their water. For every difficulty the peak folks faced, they contracted some solution. Daily, Rogan passed by huge water wagons, steel-axled and restore-drawn. Pumps were common tools, and their repair was a common trade. Only once did he brush with danger, when he ran afoul of an aggressing crider. It crept up from the road from his deep nest, in search of carrion. Rogan froze, and failed to speed fearless Brenner to flee. He marveled frightfully at its arrayed eyes, stalked and sunken, the fluid motion of many legs, a rigid red exoskeleton. It probed him with long feelers, and let out a screeching chirp. He stared down the calculating creature for long enough to lose track of time and all sense. But then, from down road galloped a Ven Knight, patrolman of Roska's roads. With a confident shout and a brandished lance, the knight commanded the beast to submission, and it scurried off back to the cracks below. Rogan thanked the guardian for his duty, but only hours afterward did the close call occur to him. That Ven Knight's selfless and unhesitant action impressed the young man indelibly, and Rogan never even asked his name. Rogan would never forget the moment he rounded the last bend to Capital Vale. The peaks gave way to a vast valley, like a clearing in a stone forest, and urban sprawl covered it from end to end. Above all stood 3 huge flat buttes clustered in the middle of the basin. Tall stone walls encircled their surfaces, broad bridges interconnected them, and countless red-shingled roofs crowned them. The kingdom's heart beat from those citadel plateaus, the high city of Sitaponto. The common district lay atop the first of the plateaus, shortest in height, yet so tremendous that Saranold village would fit upon it 100-fold. The second plateau stood twice as tall but half as wide, whereupon the metropolitan district carved a dense, stone-born skyline. The last plateau was the smallest yet tallest of the three, the Palatial District, where the pyramidal palace and other state houses formed the kingdom's seat of power. Just beyond the Vale, Mount Urudar impressed itself on the northeast horizon. A giant fossil of the king of all Criders spanned the mountainside, dormant as stone for centuries, visible from far and wide. Some said he was the corpse of the Titan Sauroth himself, so durable that even Naya could not shatter his body like the rest of his ilk in the before time. Nobody knew for sure. The King's Road carried Rogan from the peak-bound highway down and into the broad thoroughfares of the Vale. A northward turn at a crossroad square marked the main causeway up to the districts of Sitaponto. Several lanes separated inbound from outbound movement, and Reptor riders from Restore freighters. The causeway switched back twice to ease the steep incline. It was no dash at the final stretch. Under the gateway, teams of Ven Knights inspected cargo and inquired names. Their efforts dragged the passage down to a crawl. Then Rogan neared the gateway enough to spot a familiar face in the boulevard beyond, standing beside a Rox Knight's paled Reptor.
Rogel! Hey, Rogel, over here!
He cried with his spear held high. Rogel smiled when he recognized his grown-up brother, then flashed his crest to the guardsman, who then beckoned Rogan forth. He got down from Brenner and pulled him ahead on a lead past the queue, and ignoring loud complaints of nepotism, the two Tice sons reunited in a brotherly embrace. Then Rogan felt a short sword strapped to Rogel's side underneath his green finery. "You didn't have one of those the last time I saw you. Is that a captain's sword? Were you promoted again and never wrote home about it?" "Oh, I wrote home about it all right, just a couple of weeks ago. My division's captain retired and General Sortis thought I'd be best to replace him." "Congratulations, Captain." "Congratulations yourself, on finally becoming a man, I mean. Come on, I know a good place for a drink around here. My treat. I've waited too long to buy you one, Rogue." "So what are your plans in the city anyway? Gonna take up an apprenticeship? I know a few connections in the craft houses, armor smiths and such. Not bad lines of work." "Actually, I've started to think I might like to be a knight." "A knight? Like me?" "No, not like you." "Well, okay, I guess like you. You realize you have to join the army first, right? And then serve 5 years with a spotless record? Or worse, prove yourself useful in action." "Rogue, there's no need for you to volunteer. Besides, you can go out and find whatever trade you like. I never got that chance. I'm a firstborn son, straight to the military at 16, and I'm lucky to have made good of my service. Plenty of soldiers stay soldiers forever. Did you think about that?" Well, no, I hadn't. Don't get me wrong, I won't stop you. Just think about it before giving your life to it, that's all." Several moments passed in silence, which Rogan broke to probe. "So, Rogel, since you're a captain of the King's Guard and all, do you think you can take me on a tour of the palace?" Meanwhile, in the palace audience hall, a spy crept on softened steps through the stone-carved palace halls. The distant echoes of debate rang around, the words indistinguishable at first, until the footpads snuck close enough to eavesdrop on the talks with clarity. The dominant and testy voice of King Azza were the first to come into earshot. "Our two nations' allegiance is at stake. You won't smooth this over with witless excuses." "Please, King Azza, your highness. The aristocracy has no intent of making an enemy of the Bulwark Kingdom. Not over anything so petty as this," said one of the two Dusolian dignitaries, each representing the houses of Celian and Delsai. "Petty? My spies have word of Dusolian proof marks on the guns of the Parcanian Navy, half the realm away. What measures have you against the same falling into Muson hands? Any at all?" "Your Majesty, Parkanon is a young nation, breaking away from the Emperor just as our two nations once did. Surely you sympathize." "You're misdirecting again, Ambassador. A foreign navy constitutes a military sale." "I don't misdirect. For such a young navy, their armaments are surely private stock." And all this conveniently after assassins took Lord Feroda, may he rest." King Ozza, what are you implying? No more than you infer, gentlemen, said Ozza, oblivious to the hidden eavesdropper. She sidled herself tightly against one of the outer columns, motionless. She breathed steadily and silently. She pulled her black hair in tight so not a tendril would be caught in view. The other Dusolian continued. Forgive me for saying so, Majesty, but the firearm is the future. Surely you realize this. Why else would you bulletproof your knights? Say the word and we can arm and train an entire division on our latest rifles. If only you'd lower your pride and allow a line of credit to... Lower our pride? I didn't mean... Is there nothing you slitters won't twist into an insulting sales pitch? The eavesdropper could no longer retain her composure. King Ozza's outburst inspired a stifled and unwelcome chortle that emanated from behind her column. Ozza could not help a minor chuckle of his own. Pardon my daughter. She is rightfully curious about these proceedings. Phelan! Come on out, I know you're there. Princess Phelan clapped a hand over her mouth. Mortified and frozen still, she glanced around, startled to see none other than General Sordus himself, standing over her with his tense yet tempered glare. I will escort you out, Princess. Sir Rogel, why aren't you enjoying your day off? Your Highness, good to see you. I decided to show my out-of-towner guest the best view in town. I hope you permit. Rogan's perspiration intensified underneath his overly warm finery. He heard that voice before, years ago. An implacable portent came over him, but only for a moment. You know I permit, Sir Tice. I don't care for all those stuffy rules anyway. I'm not a general, you know. Of course not, Highness. Care to introduce me to your friend? Actually, as I recall, the two of you have already met. Rogel pulled Rogan around by the shoulder, and he beheld Princess Phelan for the second time in his life. She had grown in every pleasing way to a young man's eyes. Her night dark curls draped over her sky blue gown, nearly down to her narrow waist. Her amber eyes, rare partners to black hair, flashed in the daylight. She still wore the same silver circlet. Its arc widened over time with daily wear while she matured and learned. She studied him for a moment until recognition took her. Oh, by Naya, I don't believe it. You're Rogan! With a little spring of her legs and a leap of Rogan's heart, she casted her arms around his shoulders and rested her head a moment against his chest. He knew not the courtly, proper way to respond, but he held her round delicately, his hands hovering above her hips. With nervousness, Rogan said, It's wonderful to see you again, Phelan. Your Highness. Oh, wow, it's, wonderful to look at you, too. He regretted the shallow turn of phrase when Phelan glanced away to hide a blush. Rogel interjected the cloying reunion. So, you were just in the meeting with the Dusolian delegation, am I correct, Highness? That's not the right way to put it. My father barred me from attendance for whatever reason, but I hasn't been happy with the Dusolians corrupt and... Hey, did you know that there's only assassinated last year and no heir was ever on a tangent? Sorry. Anyway, you see, and... I'm sorry, am I boring you with all the political talk? No, not at all. It's actually kind of intriguing. Anyway, the Dusolians took no responsibility, so don't you dare repeat it or you might be executed. I quote, Is there nothing you Dusolian slitters won't twist into an insulting sales pitch? Well, anyway, I really ought to be getting back to my chambers. I told Mrs. Taura I was using the, Well, Sir Tice, Rogan, good day to you both. We'll meet another time, perhaps. Of course, Your Highness. Anytime, Princess Phelan. Just send a royal summons. I'll make the time. Rogan did not intend to seek out an apprenticeship the next morning. Though he lay silent and exhausted in his rented room, his mind fantasized of future glory beyond rational hope, naive dreams of high adventure and heroic romance. He had met some of those most courageous men of the kingdom, the Knights of Roska, and he wished to be among them. He had seen the beauty of his liege's scion in person, and he wished to serve her. He chose his path with no hope of dissuasion, and so he drafted a letter home. To Argel Tice, Saranald Village, the Southern Hillboroughs. Dear Father, I arrived in Sitaponto today and met Rogel. I'm sure you heard the news of his promotion to captain. He took me for a tour in the royal palace and you'll never believe who he ran into. Princess Phelan. Rogel assured me she remembers the day she spent with her family fondly. I'm writing to tell you that tomorrow I plan to enlist into the army. With my own reptor and spear and with my brother's good word, I'm sure to be accepted. If I serve for 5 years without strikes, I will qualify to be knighted into one of the 6 orders, just like Rogel. I will devote myself to this goal. Hoping you, the Restors, and all our neighbors are in good health and spirits. With love, your son, Rogan. Meanwhile, back at the palace. In the Crown Princess's bedchamber, Phelan laid in her reading nook and perused a tome on the history of Rosca-Dusolian relations. As the hour grew late, her 4-post canopy bed lay welcome and warm, but as yet she had not even dressed down to her nightgown. She read attentively by the light of her own fireplace and stoked the blaze frequently. The light narrowed her off-scattered attention toward her studies. King Ozza entered his daughter's chamber without a knock, and the surprise of his appearance rocked her attention. She knew why he came, and immediately she prostrated into an apology. Father, I am so sorry I snuck into that meeting. You see, I was just so curious about what was going on, and I couldn't resist. Save your contrition for another time, my princess. I do not seek it. In fact, I forgive you before all else. Oh. Okay, so I'm not in trouble? No. But you would do well to remember the lesson of the anvil of Noah Kawir. You see, it's this anvil their chieftain dangles from a rope over his throne as a reminder of his burden. Now, I don't think he actually sits there, though. It sounds dreadfully unsafe. Ozza's hands rested on his daughter's shoulders in affirmation. Anyway, Faye, there's nothing wrong with a little espionage every now and again, but we have the Department of Spycraft for that. But Dad, I was wondering, what did they mean about a line of credit? Another time, Ozza answered with a sigh. They are a nation of gadgets and gold, ours one of honor and duty. Not exactly the makings of a stalwart friendship. But don't tempt me to lecture. You need your rest. Come on now, get to bed. You're right. I'm quite exhausted. Good night, Dad. Good night, Phelan. No more fire. Wash up and get straight to sleep, he added as he exited the bedchamber. Of course, Dad. Love you, said Phelan, as her father left and shut the doors behind him. Next, Phelan partially obeyed her father's wishes. She stripped down, without a handmaiden's aid as per her preference, quickly washed the day from her skin at her wash basin, and put on her silken sleeping gown. Then, as a matter of course, she threw a few pieces of wood onto her fireplace to renew the blaze, and continued to read and read unto the approaching midnight, in pursuit of clues. Rosca's vast military institution boasted a most arduous 6-month training regimen, each month spent in the tutelage of each of the 6 orders of the Knights of Rosca. First, the honor guards of the Rux Knights imposed the basic training, marching instruction, physical conditioning, and book study of military protocol. The process weeded out the weak, unready, and unsound. Many recruits drop out or are found wanting. In the second month, the Homeland Patrolmen of the Ven Knights trained non-lethal takedowns by day and practical law by evening. The next month, the Border Guards of the Var Knights took the recruits under wing in the ways of surveillance, reconnaissance, and archery. The Orloff Knights, weapon masters, furthered the trainees' combat arts, the ways of the spear, the axe, the sword, and more. During the 5th month, recruits took to mounts with the Reptor Knight Cavalry. Their training exercise routed throughout the inner regions of the Sorathi Peaks, from Capital Vale to Arma's Stronghold, the Cold Sea Cliffs to the town of Crossway, and back again. The Kreider Knights, tactical specialists, oversaw the 6th and final month of training. That final period tied together all the protocol and fighting and riding together to complete an understanding of what it meant to be a soldier of Rosca. Upon completion, new men ascended to the echelon of responsibility for king and country. Rogan Tice, who had proved apt to riding, was assigned to the 16th Mounted Division, an auxiliary mobile unit subjunctive to the Var Knights' 29th Eastern Company, the Border Patrol in other words. The men of the 16th frequently carried out drills or exercises to keep their skills sharp, but infrequently engaged in enforcement actions. By 1652, Vague rumors spread throughout the army of suspicious Muson activity, the exact nature of which the High Command would not confirm. Nevertheless, the 16th Mounted Division were reassigned to garrison the smaller watchtowers along Solroth's Ridge. That's how Rogan found himself at humble Fort Ornar, where he remained for over a year, until a turn in course for Roskin history. Fort Ornar stood upon a cliffside summit right on the edge of the ridge. It was little more than a walled enclosure, and within a multi-storied watchtower, a barracks hall for its garrison of 20 men, and a stable for their reptors. For being only a day's swift ride from Capital Vale, the posting felt impossibly remote. The tower stood at the end of a single rugged road that led nowhere else. There were no passers-by, only thrice-monthly deliveries of food, supplies, and postage. There was little to do to pass the time, but the fort's commander, a Varnite named Lieutenant Redrick, allowed his men much leeway in their idle pursuits and absurd games invented in boredom's madness. The tower battlements overlooked a clear view to the east, the sole reason Fort Ornar and many like it existed. The Westlanders' ancestral enemy, the Muson Empire. Their westerly territories, the plains of Quelos, lay at the bottom of a sheer cliff drop and stretched out to the far horizon. The garrison rarely spotted imperial activity, military or otherwise. Often there were roaming herds of Rin beasts on the grasses and rolling hills. Sometimes hunting parties of Qualan peasants stalked and stampeded the beasts, but there was never any sign of soldiers. Still, the Roskin men at Fort Ornar kept to their standing orders, diligent in spite of the dullness. There upon the battlements, Rogan reread a letter from his brother that harkened an eventful day to come, with key details omitted for secrecy's sake. Rogue, hope you're well. Not much time to write. Making preparations for a tour at her behest. We'll be traveling first to Fort Highwall, and then a leisure trip along the ridge. We'll be due to reach Ornar on the 22nd of this month. Thought you'd like to know, Mr. Suitor. Your brother. A call-out came from atop the gateway. Riders, approaching from the northbound road. Autumn and Legee, back from patrol? Nah, 10 riders. Looks like the Rox Knights. Sir Redrick ascended the ladder to the wall and took up his spyglass. Ah, great blaze, it's them. And they're coming fast, he commanded loud and clear. No time to finish tidying. Look alive. Line up on the double. Sartek, Kine, open the gate. The men of Redrick's command lined up in 2 rows before the wide, expecting gateway as the galloping Rox Knights drew closer. The question occurred to the soldiers. Why so swift? Something was wrong. The 10 mounted knights barged through the gateway, silver armor shining, visors down, and amid them there she was. Rogan recognized her riding side saddle in tandem with the captain of the band. The rider helped her off before dismounting himself, and lifted his visor. Rogel! He spoke. Who's in command here? You're the lieutenant, yes? Yes, sir. Lieutenant Redrick. Captain Tice, shut the gate. Barricade it if you can. Yes, sir. Kine, Sartek, get after it. Sir, what's the matter? There's a Yoxanese warband short on our tail. They outnumber us all some 3 to 1, and their commander is a Gigan. A Gigan? A Yoxanese band? Yoxanese by outfit, surely Muson by command. Of course. Alright. Step 2, men. We're under attack. Ready yourselves. Aval, help them bar the gate. Archers, form a shooting line atop the wall. Spearmen, behind the gate. Move! Move! We've trained for this. Today you all earn Knight's Crests. It wasn't Redrick's first moment of action. He kept a semblance of assuredness as he issued his commands, and men of Fort Ornar scrambled to carry them out. Rogan? Rogan, tell me you're here. I'm here, Rogel. Oh, thank Naya. I was afraid you were one of the patrolmen we found along the road. Onum and Legee. Their bodies were used as ambush bait. They're Solrothi Knights now. Solrothi Knights. The honorific bestowed on Roskin regulars killed in action. Their names would be etched on the walls of Sitaponto to protect its people forever. Damn imp slaughtered the rest of the girls and 5 of my men. Princess? Balin stood in the middle of the ordered chaos as the soldiers prepared their defenses. She looked bewildered, hands clasped over a quaking heart within her breast. Her night dark hair a tossed mess under her silver circlet. Even her gold amber eyes had dulled, deadened. Princess, you remember my brother Rogan, yes? Rogan. Yeah. I'm sorry, Highness, there's no time. Rogan, get her inside the watchtower now, and bar the door, hurry! Then get back out here and don't leave my side. Yes, sir. Your Highness, please, Phelan. It's me. You do remember me, right? Rogan? Oh, I had looked forward to seeing you today. Oh, what's happening? It's okay, Phelan. There'll be another time. But look, this fort yard is going to be a battlefield, and who knows how soon. You have to get inside. It'll be safer. Yes. Inside. Safe. I have a duty to stay safe. Rogan held her hand and guided her into the base room of the watchtower. You'll seem alone in here, but just remember, we're all outside, ready to keep your company as soon as this all blows over. I'm gonna shut the door. You have to bar the latch behind me. Yes, sir. I'll see you soon. I promise. She nodded her head, with fear and hope mixed together in her tearful amber eyes. Rogan shut her within, safeguarded as she could be in a hopeless scenario. Per his brother's word, Rogan rushed up the wall-side ladder to stand at his side. Over the battlements, he saw them. A raid party from the Yoxanese steppes, darkly armored and two apiece upon some 40-odd lopers. The beastly mounts growled with furs bristled on end, clawed paws and fanged maws bared. Half the raiders brandished swords, lances, and the like. The rest carried muskets, long-barreled and loaded. The fore of their column rode a tremendous man, alone upon his muscular loper, surely the Geigen commander Rogel had mentioned. Shrunken skulls and ancient curses adorned his blackened steel armor. His face was whitened with ash, and many rings pierced his cartilages. All his grim decorum warned of his deadliness.
I am War Chief Zenkadi, and I speak for Emperor Ixis. Have you my quarry cloistered?
I am Captain Tice, and I speak for King Azza. You will never take her without a fight.
Fool.
He issued an order in Mussanese to 4 of his men, who each launched metal spheres through spring-loaded tubes. They hissed as they flew through the air right over the wall, and thudded in a grouping in the middle of the yard. The nosy soldier Kine broke rank to investigate them. What the hell are these? But Sir Redrick knew. Grenades! Take cover! His men dove aground. Kine blew apart. The first killed outright. His legs tore off, his torso peeled open, bits of him landed all over. A bloody helm, the last of it. Some bled from grazes. Some collapsed from shards lodged in their limbs, but the knights stood unharmed, their armor effective as designed. Rogan remained unscathed, but his whole body recoiled and trembled. Shock and terror gripped hold within the fort. Rock's knights, as one, attack! The knights in his command mustered courage and rushed forth into the approaching horde. With one axe swing, the Geigens and Kadi brushed 2 knights aside like bugs. Their thick armor crinkled where impacted, causing grave injury within. The first wave of foes, pikemen, distanced the defenders, and over their shoulders musket barrels rested, taking aim. A shot volley rattled like thunder. Musket balls zipped about at random, ricocheted off knights' armor and burrowed through the soldiers beside them. There was never a hope of victory, nor ever a thought to surrender. Half the Ruskan defenders, in the matter of a minute, were killed or deathly wounded. The knights lasted longest, but numbers overwhelmed them one by one. Spooked reptors ran rampant, tail-whipped friend and foe alike, serving nothing. Lieutenant Redrick drew his sword and jumped from the wall, his blade aimed for Zenkadi's unhelmed shaven skull. The Geigen pivoted, and Redrick, his mark missed, landed in a heap at the enemy's feet. Zenkadi pinned him under boot, raised his axe, and swung it down like a windmill blade. Redrick's helmeted head flew off and rolled away. Rogel grabbed Rogan roughly, and he saw his big brother's mouth move, but heard only a deafened ring through the faint clashing and howls. Rogel repeated himself louder. Is there a back way out? Through the stables. We got a back road hidden in the brush. Rogel heard half of Rogan's words, but understood at least the affirmative. Take Brenner, I'll cover your escape. Come on! With his lance in one hand and his drawn sword in the other, Rogel led his little brother around the walls to the far side of the enclosure, where they descended a small stairway. An enemy saw their movement and advanced upon them, a bludgeon brandished. Sir Rogel attempted to run him through, but the fiend parried his lance thrust and laid in towards the softer target, Rogan. The enemy raised his mace. Rogan flinched and raised his arms. The blunt strike landed on his right forearm with a gruesome snap.
Agony rocked Rogan from his arm through his core, and he shrieked louder than ever in all his life. When he managed to open his eyes, he saw his attacker cut down dead by Rogel. Go, Rogue, you gotta survive. Get your ride, I'll hold them off. You must inform the High Command what's happened here. Rogel, you can come with me. There are plenty of raptors. My place is here. I'm sworn to protect her. But Rogel! Captain's order, get the hell out of here! Rogan obeyed his brother and commander, even as two more foes essayed him. Within the stable, Rogan's approach brought some small measure of ease to a panicked Brenner. Come on, old boy. We're leaving. He holstered his spear into the saddle. With his free left arm, he unlatched the back door, as his right hung limp, misshapen, and useless. He managed to untie Brenner's hitch and mount him, and with his feet set into his stirrups, the Raptor's legs and his own were as one. They bolted away. With every gallop, his arm throbbed, but Rogan could not spare attention to it. Upon Brenner, he rounded Fort Ornar by the narrow back road toward the front, and the Raptor leapt through the brush onto the main road, clear from view. He fled, as ordered, away from the din of the battle. He did not look back, except in his mind's eye. He could still see his brother fight off many foes for his escape. And Phelan, oh Phelan! Such fear and hope mixed on her face. He still had a promise to keep to her. Beneath a high blanket of rustling leaves, a lone traveler on Reptorback made way down a rough and rarely tread pathway. He was several years shy of being counted among the elderly, a prospect which disquieted the man supremely. His wide-brimmed hat guarded against the daylight sun and concealed a bald spot as a bonus. His beard grew gray and unkempt. He vested himself with ranger's fatigues lined with countless pockets and pouches. His dark green Raptor's saddlebags were laden heavily with gear and provisions. An inordinate variety of bows jutted prominently from among his supplies. A heavy long bow for distance, a repeating crossbow for speed, and a short recurve for whatever else. A simple arming sword by his side concluded his arsenal. But he was not a violent man, but a peacekeeper, retired yet ever ready. He had once been a huntsman of Palazea, where he patrolled the vast prairies and woodland tracts for outlaws and natural dangers. Retired from the rough life, he planned pilgrimage to see all he could see while he still possessed the strength. The first stop on his list was a place of mythic history, the life spring of Rentea, said to be enshrouded in the innavigable giant forests at the heart of the Westlands. Legends told of 5 such life springs in Unaya, epicenters of Naya's will upon her cruciform realm. At the westerly spring of Rentea, it was said, dwelt a secret sanctuary where the indigenous Cardian tribes still lived, just as they had during their Red Golden Age. Rumors insisted the hidden enclave endured even the imperial times. An improbable claim, but worth exploration whether true or false, whether he would find the life spring or get lost along the way. In the golden green woods, rays of sunlight filtered through the treetops above. Skemps scuttled all around, slitters slithered across branches, and lingbirds sang and sailed from tree to tree. With each mile traveled, the trees all around grew wider, thicker, and taller. The undergrowth became so dense that without his Raptor's 2 tough talons, he could not have traversed it. The canopy above thickened more and more, as dark as night in the mid-afternoon. There, where any average traveler would have long averted, lay the unguarded boundaries of the sacred wood, so dark and cool that he no longer knew if daylight still shone above the canopy. To light his path, he pulled out his sparker, a Dusolian-made lamp that lit and snuffed at a trigger's pull. The flame, for all of its help, availed little against the sheer darkness of the woods. A black fog surrounded him, the air thick and still. Out of the gloom he spotted an odd sight in the distance, a ghostly blue-green wisp of light. Steadfast, he continued as straightforward as he could manage, when suddenly the thick undergrowth cleared away beneath him, giving way to a glittery cobblestone road crusted with iridescent lichens. The rider's mount strode freely again over the pleasantly surprising road. He shortly reached the source of the ghostly light, and the close inspection confounded him. A water-filled bauble hung from high above, containing a bright, luminous fish. Beyond, he perceived many more of the same lights spaced regularly down the road, like street lamps. He extinguished his sparker, seeing no further use for it, and carried onward a short while. Suddenly, a voice spoke from his periphery, the language incomprehensible. He feared a coronary event from the startlement. His eyes darted around to the sight of a young man, curious to inspect the wanderer. Apparently of Cardian descent by his navy hair and eyes, he wore a drab cloak and fashioned a thin mustache and goatee from what little whiskers his age allowed him. The young man saw the bewilderment in the traveler's face and switched to a more familiar language. "Forgive me, I forgot my manners. You must not speak Old Cardian, do you?"
Well, no. Nobody I know talks the old tongue anymore. Except, I guess, for you.
"Ah, well, I learned the young tongue just in case an outsider ever appeared. I admit this is the first time I've needed it."
Oh, now. Lucky for me.
"Indeed. Tell me, what are you called, outsider?"
My name? Everybody calls me Walker. And you are?
"Tenold, of Tribe Londor. Tell me, where do you come from? Why have you come here?"
Full questions, are ya? I'm from Palazea. And I don't have a reason why. I simply wanted to leave my home and start, well, walking. Before I fool myself, this is the real Rentea I've just arrived in, right?
Rentea is one name for our sanctuary, yes.
And the life spring?
Is it really here? Does it exist? The spring itself? Of course it exists. It's the place of our sanctuary, like I said.
Then the legends are true.
Say, Mr. Lorndor, please, just Tenold is fine, Mr. Walker. Walker dismounted from his raptor and offered his hand to young Tenold. The two shook, and the strangers became fast friends.
Well then, Tenold, would you permit me the privilege of seeing the life spring for myself?
There's no need for me to permit you, sir, but I will show you the way. I warn you, though, most of my kin don't care to deal with outsiders. At that moment, the two pulled around one of the tremendous trunks, and the life spring of Rentea revealed itself to Walker's eyes. He'd never seen a sight more wondrous, nor could he well imagine one. The waters of the mile-wide pool shimmered and rippled with turquoise light, darkened only by the boats and barges dotted on the surface. The light cast upon the giant trees lining its coast. Skyward spiral stairs led up to wide branches and boughs, halls and longhouses arrayed above for many strata, suspended by woodwork and ropes interconnected with bridges, and lit with countless starlight pinpricks of Gleefer's light.
Now I really have seen everything. I could end my walk right on this spot and feel I haven't missed a thing.
I could not say the same. This forsaken city is the only place I know.
Forsaken? It's heavenly.
Tenold, you're the first Rentean I've ever even heard of. Do any of your folk ever leave this place? You ever have in our history, and they are not well thought of. The punishment for desertion is exile. Ironic, isn't it?
So when you leave the country, it's called desertion? Where I'm from, it's called vacation.
We take our isolation too seriously, and nobody really knows why anymore. There are a few who agree with me, but none so fervently.
Come on now, why don't you recite one of your poems for me?
I don't know about that. They're not interesting or original.
I'll be the judge of that. I insist. I'll give you my honest opinion.
All right, Walker, you win. Let me see.
Get on with it.
Fine. I warn you again, I don't think it's very good.
Long, long ago, before the time when we people ached our lives across this wide realm of Unaya, there was only the Life Mother, Naya. From the void emerged rocks, they begat Var and Ven, the one became four, and 6 days from then, the land they labored upon created, but they knew not what destiny fated. From Naya's 5 sacred springs she gave life to titanic beings, the Lorna who stood tall and great, and the spring of the west gave life to 8, Solroth the strong one, Russo the serene, Ario the grievous, Lorndor the keen, Pallas the wind ruler, Rent of the trees, Sordis the all-judge, and Uther of the seas. Half their lives they labored the lands, gave life to animals, made soil from sands. The next half they made war in a world unequal. Both sides saw themselves a force of good against evil. So thus Mother Naya, with a fury untold, destroyed her creations and tore out their souls, to give instead to newborn lesser folk. From each Titan's soul, mankind's tribes awoke. Tenold shut the book when he finished reciting the short poem, and all was still and quiet for a moment while Walker considered what he had heard. "You're right, Tenold. That wasn't very good at all. I warned you, after all. I mean, there's so much about those old stories that people forget. I'm sure you could have gone on and on about it, but there's really not much else to—" And Uther's the Titan of rivers, not seas. An old buddy of mine's an Uther, actually. I know that, but to make it rhyme... But the rhymes, don't they seem a little... how do I say this? Forced? The great masters of poetry never stretched so far to make their lines work together. I'm not one of the great masters. Why, a fresh mind like yours ought to be bounding with imagination. You should be writing something original, the like of which has never been read before. All right, I've heard quite enough, sir. No offense, Tenold, I was only giving you my opinion. The truth is, Walker, I don't disagree with you, but inspiration does not find me easily. I have every wish in the world to write the things I can't imagine. The sky, the mountains, the seas and the rivers. Things I've never seen before and may never see in my life. To utter so deep a fear gave the poet pause. When I was just a boy, I met another outsider, but unlike yourself, he was a Cardian of the Nukaraya Sanctuary, in tribe Ario, if memory serves. He came here on a pilgrimage, and oh, what stories he had to tell. He traveled the world, met great and powerful people, and I wanted to be just like him. You won't be anything like him just waiting around here. Why don't you join me? Join you for what? My journey, of course. When I retired, I decided to start walking down every less familiar fork in every road until I'd seen every great sight there is to see in all the Westlands. The Solrothi Peaks, the Cold Sea, Uther's Delta, all of it. It's an old man's whimsy, but I think you could use a good bit of adventuring too. But Walker, I already told you, the penalty for desertion is exile. I'd never be allowed to come back here again. It don't sound to me like you even like this place too much to begin with. You're right, Walker. I don't. Ever since mankind sailed the seas, there had always been a grand port city on the eastern tip of the southern coast of the Westlands. It was once called the Port of Utheros during the Cardian Age, where upon the city's central mound stood the Temple of Uther. Musan Imperials took the city in the 11th century, demolished the temple and built a house of state over the ruins. Musan banners reigned until the Westlander Rebellion of the 14th century, when Lord Delsai, middle-born son of Archduchess Dusol, inherited authority over the port, which came to share his name, Delsai City. Lord Delsai converted the Imperial State House into a splendid manor, crowned with white towers. Ever since its establishment, generations of noble progeny expanded House Delsai. Galleries, halls, quarters, libraries, offices, vaults, equal parts mansion, castle, and capital. It was the third largest residence in all Unaya. Only the Musan Palace and the Noxisian Mayoral Hall surpassed it. Midnight.
A lady knight captain patrolled the great house. She possessed the build of an athlete or acrobat, slight yet stout, and fit for her age of 33 years. She wore a scale-like plate Produsolian fashion, cobalt-plated steel over a stiff doublet. The custom women's suit protected every bit as the standardized counterpart for men, but with enhanced attention to aesthetics, form paired to feminine comfort and altogether worthy of the rare and exceptional women who wore it. The armor's azure color signified servitude to House Delphi. A broad belt of section plates protected her lower torso, and her upper breastplate displayed a motif of feathered wings. Her hands, encased in dexterous gauntlets, lay ever ready to quick-draw the saber sheathed at her left hip or the pistol holstered on the right. She held her head high and unhelmed. She kept her silver hair bun-tied away from her narrow, icy eyes, Musan traits from a heritage traced back to the Imperials, a bloodline pure. Her dutiful spirit hardened soft features. Her name was Nyera. She prowled the old bookkeeping vaults, where by day clerics managed all under the Lord's auspices. For a Dusolian aristocrat, business came first, pleasure second, and legislature a distant third. The twin moonlights of Var and Ven watched through the north-facing windows. Corridors of iron doorways cloistered secrets behind heavy locks. The Lady Knight spotted a broken pattern on the floor. She pulled and lit a compact sparker from her belt pouch to see the carpet, brushed just hours prior, freshly indented as though by a shoveled step. The vague print indicated onward down the hall. Nyera held her flame toward the darkness, drew her pistol with her free hand, and proceeded. She checked every strong door, all still secure. The hall terminated at a final vault, its contents so secret that 4 separate unique locks should have barred it. But it hung open on its hinges, left ajar. The only logical reason was treason afoot within. Misappropriation, dissidence, espionage. The silent realization gave her next purpose. Nyera snuffed her sparker. The darkness revealed a soft light within the open vault. She pulled the iron-spoked knob and furthered toward the glow. She heard murmurs and rustling papers. She saw shadows flicker in lantern light. Discipline tempered her nerves for the rush to come. Nyera pulled her pistol's cocking hammer and readied her saber hand for the follow-up. She burst in. Her sighting pin found a target, but her trigger finger rested. "Don't move!" The assailant, unstartled, ready to snub-nose gun of her own. But she too stayed her shot. Even in the dancing lamplight there was a mutual recognition. A younger woman in dark sneaking garb, uncommonly beautiful with smooth brown hair tied back. She stood before a table piled in records rifled from the vault's many column stacks. "Anna, you she-cur! If it was anyone else, I'd shoot you."
Don't you call my sweetheart names.
Another voice, a man's, came from within the column stacks. Nyera's aim moved to it.
You wouldn't shoot me either, would you?
He revealed himself. A man in his late 20s in a black tunic, a bandolier over his shoulder and a gilded pistol holstered at his side. Pale white hair, nearly shoulder length, streamed down from a black band around his head, and his frost-colored eyes glinted from the low light.
Carry on, darling. The more the better. I'll deal with our Lady Knight.
Miskiro? I thought you'd know better than to show your face here. You've betrayed me.
Me betray you? Not the other way around. You walked away from your duty.
What? My duty is here, you incorrigible... how did you even get in here?
Oh, you know, people talk, especially under threat, or threat of a good time. Not to mention those scorned within this very house who offer their spite freely.
There are no dissidents under my command.
Yes, I'm sure you have all sorts of political discussions with the men beneath you. Actually, it was one of them who informed us that you patrol these corridors on Norde nights.
So you wanted me to catch you.
I am an architect of coincidences, but you haven't cuffed me yet, and you're not going to. You know, Nyera, you really should assign more men to the construction area in the South Wing. We only encountered 2. That was Zelson and Lexley's watch. What did you... You killed my men, didn't you?
Quiet down, we didn't kill anyone. They were our informants.
What? No, not them. Why would you tell me that? Because by the time you and I are done talking, we'll have one more sympathizer in the ranks of the Delsai Knights. What makes you so sure? I'll start off with the simple stuff. Bills of sale for forbidden goods. If there's anywhere else you think they'd be stored, then by all means. Good Lorna, forbidden bills of sale. How preposterous. The Ruskin trade sanctions are ironclad. We're in a room full of proof to the contrary. Do you really think paltry trade sanctions from some bloviating fiefdom like Roska would— The lords would never. They have done it all and worse. They taught you too well in that lady knight school of yours. Taught you how to tangle your mind into knots, to avert your eyes from aristocrats' crimes, to serve the state above even your people. Nair stood silenced, nerve-racked. Indeed, her years of service erected rigid walls within her mind. Behind them, she locked all fear and doubt. Her pistol had long since lowered, her trigger finger disarmed. She holstered it. There, you know I'm right. But you've been caught up in this lady knight career of yours for so long that you won't let yourself see that you're just serving a power-drunk regime. The truth has a hard way of finding someone whose salary depends on a lie. If you only knew the worst of what the lords have done to us. What do you mean by that? Naira. They killed our parents. Not again with those inane theories. See for yourself. Miss Guiro produced a bound writ and handed it over. She opened it and read, Classified State Secret. Render of execution, Distern 40th, 1649. By the order of Lord Rolgris Delsai and Elerneld Celian. To be terminated, Lord Milniero Feroda, Lady Sania Feroda. Naira and Miss Guiro were both once heirs of the aristocracy, daughter and son to Lord Milniero and Lady Sania of House Feroda, northern Dusolia. Lord Milniero used his position to further a just course of policy. In the last years of his life, he took aim at the nation's excessive economic entanglements. The aristocracy controlled Dusolian industry and profited unduly off the backs of genius engineers, skilled tradesmen, and hard laborers. Lord Milniero demanded no less than a total severance of state and economy to direct the flow of gold to the hands of hard-working commoners. This compromise was unacceptable to the avaricious lords of Celian and Delsai. In desperation, the last lord of Feroda urged the people to redress their government and take control of their own industry. Public debate on the subject became mired in ideology and muddled with fallacy. The debate shook even the Feroda family table, Milniero and son for reform, Sania and daughter for stability. Then came Distern 40th, 1649, and the family was torn apart forever when a pair of gunshots echoed through the house of Feroda. The former Lord Milniero and Lady Sania lay dead. No killer was ever caught. The state laid blame on a stirring dissident movement. The contradiction made little sense to anyone of the mind to question it, but few dared do so publicly. But Miss Guiro Feroda dared. As son of the esteemed lord and martyr, he captured the hearts and minds of the disgruntled public. Naira, heiress to her house as well as a lady knight, fled from her family to her career as to flee from grief and from guilt. She had no wish to carry her father's legacy. She renounced her nobility and disowned her insurrectionist brother, a duped fool she deemed him. She redoubled her loyalty and service to her lords and state, those who should have been her peers. She would rather hold up her knight's oaths, to see great Dusolia preserved, never to fall to the chaos of mob rule. She thought her young brother an imbecile and a traitor. She believed him no better than those who tore their parents away from them. She believed everything forced into her mind back to the military academy, where she constructed all those walls within herself to ensure she could only see her reasons as just. Until that night, when she held proof in shaking hands that her brother was right all along, and she was wrong. It was the last shockwave from her walls crumbling down, and all she hid behind them came loose, her discipline, her conditioning, shattered. All the errors and regrets of her life were laid bare before her. Tears arrived. Before she realized, her brother, years estranged by enmity and bitterness,
embraced her as family once again. Minutes passed in solemnity. No words were needed. As the enormity of the errors in Naire's ways became realized, so too did the infamous rebel leader discern that he had accomplished his mission's secondary objective. The rightful heiress to the title of Lady Feroda recruited to his cause.
Miskit, we have to make ourselves scarce, now!
Miskit? I forgot we used to call you that. Miskit the Musketeer. And I still prefer rifles to muskets, obviously. Still a cute nickname. Naira was spirited back home to House Feroda, playing heroic make-believe with her baby brother, wars with sticks and pop guns against imagined villains. Could it be that way again, but by steel ball and powder?
Miskit!
Right, the getaway. Naira, can you cover for us? I suppose I'll have to. Come on. Upon return to the outer hallway, Naira took her saber and pommel-bashed the nearest window. The glass shattered into 1,000 shards. Go down the hall that way, through the west halls. I'll tell my men you escaped through the window. Hurry! Wait, Naira. Anna? Give her one of the bills. Anna handed her another document. You'll know what to do when you read it. There's much more where it came from. We will soon litter the streets with them. Anna indicated her satchel, brim full with stolen papers. Naira took the document and quickly stowed it underneath her fault. Whatever you say, just go! Till next time, sister. From Naira's chamber in the barracks, she retrieved her traveling cloak and a coin purse of red gold, all she would need for the journey. She next retrieved her reptor from the stables, a blue-feathered female called Azura. One of her knights, who would be hers to command no longer, stopped her before she departed. Captain Feroda, you might not be so pleased to hear we caught the thief from tonight. We identified him. You see, it was Misquiero Feroda. Despite our efforts to divert the pursuit, he still got himself caught. No matter. This was his fourth arrest. Escape had become his specialty. And he had no accomplices? No, sir. And oddly empty-handed apart from armaments. So Anna got away clean, and with the stolen documents too. Thank you, Lieutenant. Without a further word, she bid her reptor to gallop and sped off into the night by northward roads to Rosca. On the southernmost tip of Yggdrasil, there subsisted an old fishing town, dusted with foreboding autumn snowfall under a grey sky. The Yggdrasili folk there busied about by boarding up windows and erecting bulwarks at the walled town's gate. A quiet fear consumed them as they steeled themselves against the oncoming blizzard, not of wind and snow, but of imperial conquest. A lone hooded rider astride a woolly antlered herricker approached Pontasudra at speed. A long black gambeson jacket warmed and protected him. 4 black braids, 2 apiece in his hair and beard, dangled from his hood and whipped about as he galloped. Strapped fast and firm to his left side was a sword of whitest steel, wrought with aggressive decorum. A bold hilt jutted out, a constant threat from the blade within its rigid oaken sheath. The rider arrived to the town gates, unhooded himself, and spoke in Yggdrasili to a few bystanders. "Close the gate!" And they did so, for they would recognize that man anywhere, even from just a description, and they would do whatever he told. "The elder of my tribe is here, yes? At the temple?" The villagers affirmed him, and he dismounted and powered off without even hitching his herricker. Just off the town square there stood a simple but sizable Cardian temple, a place of worship and reflection for those Yggdrasilis of part Cardian descent. 5 of the 8 Cardian Titans were represented there by stone statuettes, for those tribes who sought refuge in Yggdrasil 6 centuries before. Viliet passed by the icons of strong Soroth, his 8 limbs flexing, or wise Lorndor lost deep in thought. Reluctantly he stopped and knelt before the icon of Russo, a cloaked woman pouring water from a clay jar. The Serene Titan, his tribal namesake, his patron deity, he offered his prayer. Russo, it has been a long time since I have spoken to you who are a part of me. I know I must not be your favorite son, I bet you have already condemned my soul, but everything I do for our people. For that I must be a killer, so that others do not have to be. If I ask any favor of you, grant me this, even though I make no apology for my sins, find it in yourself to grant me.
He had no chance to complete his prayer. There came twin noises. First, the boom crack of a cannon shot, and next the crash and crumble of the town gate, reduced to rubble and splinters. They interrupted Viliet's fragile attunement to Russo's spirit, and the deathly spirit of Idris took hold. He stood, exited the humble temple, and drew his sword against the imminent blight. In the town square before the gateway, Musan soldiers already spilled through, rank and file, armed with spears and muskets. Amid them stood their commander, a Musan nobleman of moon-pale hair and eyes, a jeweled saber at his side, and a hand raised to signal his men to halt. Viliet had encountered this man before, so he called out to him, "Otu Goso, I would be happier if we never met again." "Indeed? I barely managed to defeat you the last time you escaped my grasp." "If I escaped your grasp, then you did not defeat me." "But you make wonderful sport for me, Rousseau Viliet. I always anticipate our duels." "I can't say the same. Although I admit your Idrisili speech has improved." "I do my best. How is your Musanese coming along?" "Still don't speak a filthy lick of it." "Ah, well, no matter to me." He switched language to Musanese when he commanded his soldiers. With a gesture forward, a column of spearmen, dozens, rushed. Sharp spearheads thrusted forth. The legendary sword fighter unleashed himself. Like a cornered, enraged animal, his blade bit and gashed gouges. Cruel war paint splashed him. His feet danced, his blades sang. One after another, slain, dismembered. They to him were a despicable pestilence. Feints, fakes, and weaves misdirected them. His slippery riposts killed many. But what mere moments of fleeting carnage. In the cowardly stares of survivors, Viliet realized none remained who dared assault him. He stood among the dead and those writhing with mortal wounds. "So, Goso, what else you got for me?" Viliet looked upon a row of muskets arrayed before him, locked and loaded. Goso gave the command to open fire. The shock and rattle rang loud as lightning. Musket balls fizzled the air. Plumes of gun smoke engulfed the scene. Obscured, the target vanished. But a sharp-eyed spotter saw the black-jacketed figure sprint away toward the docks. Otu Goso ordered his men give chase. Two swift swordsmen caught up to him. Viliet's detestation terrified them, and they regretted their haste. One head wrenched off, flew, and plopped into the water. Next, off came an arm and a leg. The ill-fated fell face first onto the boardwalk. Through broken teeth he howled. The sublime and abject torment. Viliet knew no sweeter music. The rest of Goso's troops shortly arrived on the scene, and every one of them feared reprisal from their enemy more than from their master. They remained well away from the four-braided warrior, his long blade quenched, his face blood-painted, consumed by indignation. Through imperial eyes he appeared as much a man of Unaya as a demon of hell. And Viliet looked back upon imps, infestors. A pang of guilt haunted him, not for the deaths he dealt with pleasure, but that he would reap none more that day. He took to an outrigger sailboat, oared out a ways before he let the sails loose. He gazed back. Never had he seen his homeland from so distant, and he could not look away until the sight shrank into the horizon. Then began his battle with an underestimated foe, the cruelty of the cold sea. Alone, with no provisions to sustain him, the southbound wind and currents raced against his hunger and thirst. "Are you awake? Are you awake?" The question drifted into the weary, recovering mind of a half-dead man. He muttered a few desperate words in Idrisili. "You need water, drink up." The waking man's muscles ached. The pain a sign of life returning to a body after lying dormant for a week. Rested from his delirium, he snatched the tankard offered to him and gulped fast. Water spilled down onto his twin-braided beard. Every drop consumed, through heavy breath he said only,
More?
We've plenty more in the barrel. Here, I'll refill it for you. Tenneld and Walker tended to their patient in the far corner of an otherwise empty tavern. The dark-garbed vagabond drank another tankard, quenching a thirst like he'd never known before. Looks like he's an Idrisili, all right. He'd guessed so from the man's heavy black braids. His desperate thirst subsided as he drank deep. He next voiced the first concern to cross his mind, but with Idrisili words. We don't know what you're saying. You know Young Tongue, yes?
I do not speak good young talk.
Tenneld asked a question in Old Cardian to try his luck.
My old talk worse. Sword. Where's my sword?
You mean this one? Yeah, we could hardly pull it from your hands when you found you.
Give it.
What sort of manners are those? Tenneld, can you believe this guy? You were nursing the wretch back to health, and, he whispered and clutched it close, as though the moment were a solemn reunion with a beloved friend. Walker appeared nervous to behold the strange sight, till he finally spoke again. What's your name, sir?
Vil. Clan name Russo. Russo Viliet.
Russo? You must be a Cardian then, at least in part.
Guardian, yes.
Well, I'm Tenneld of Tribe Londor. Nice to meet a fellow kinsman.
Yes, Londor in Idrisil, yes.
Oh, don't bury the lead. The Russo Viliet? Blizzard Blade? Eastbane's wielder? Viliet kept his true nature hidden behind a steely reserve, and uttered only, Yes. By Naya herself, I've never met someone as famous as you.
Famous,
Aye, famous. We don't hear much from the Northlands down here, lest it be about the legendary sword fighter Russo Viliet, battling the Empire single-handed. Say, I got an arming sore with my gear. I'd love you to sign the scabbard.
I'll speak more slow. My young talk is not good.
Oh, sorry, sir.
How came me by you?
Walker and I were on a boat. We're travelers, you see. We hired a boat to sit on the sea and watch the sail fins swim. We spotted your boat and pulled you to shore and carried you in here and, well, then you woke up.
I thank you, Londor and Walker.
I never fail to help someone in need, if I can help it.
An orange sky evening fast approached. The meal helped return strength to Viliet, at least enough to stand and walk again. Once out of the public house, Walker helped him find a fisherman to buy his boat. For the sum, he sought to purchase a harricker from the stable, but to his bewilderment saw nothing woolly, antlered, or hooved, just raptors, alien to his eyes. I never see these things before. Have you any with 4 legs? Alas, with no options, he spent 2 taels of cash for a black-scaled raptor to match his taste in clothes. Tenneld, having his own Rentain-bred raptor, showed Vil how to mount the beast, his feet set into boot-like stirrups. Just move your legs. Unsure at first, Vil soon found the raptor responded to intuitive commands. He had the animal striding in tandem to his slightest guidance in no time. The 3 rested the night together at the inn and departed in the morning for the Ruskan capital, the next destination on Walker's list. Having no other course, wayward Viliet decided that he would join Tenneld and Walker for the time being. Their route was eastward, as was the Empire, his nemesis. For several days, the 3 passed along the misty coast of northern Roska, or Rusoa as Viliet knew it. The view offered him no familiar comfort. Neither a Titan's ghost nor an ancestral spirit manifested to him. Nevertheless, it was peaceful, serene. His enemies were a sea away, the distance calmed him, and longing pained him. Walker enjoyed the cool, salty air, but Tenneld quickly grew accustomed to the ocean views, and impatiently waited for the next new wonder. He kept eyes skyward at every hour to track the gods turning in the sky, and he relished to sleep beneath the stars. On Twinwatch 27th was the Festival of Balance for the autumnal equinox, known for a night sky of vast symmetry,
The great moon rocks, god of men, stood alone in the south, halfway on its annual journey through the sky, while the twin deities Var and Ven watched together from the north. The 4 traveling cardinal stars, too, were each at their crested position, forming a compass-like cross overhead. For the occasion, Walker purchased a keg of Obrave and smoke herbs, the next new wonder Tenold was waiting for. They each inhaled from a device Walker called a glass lung, and coughed themselves into euphoria, and thereafter attempted haphazardly to explicate the nature of the sky. Rousseau-Villiet remained celibate to the influence. He instead spent the night in silence and serenity, and finally completed his interrupted prayer from the temple in Pontasudara. Peace. The suffering of his homeland was never further from his mind than in that single solemn moment. The vagrant warrior's young tongue gradually improved when immersed in conversation with his companions, especially when they badgered him for episodes of his life story. When Tenold the poet supposed that he had pried enough, he set a biography to verse. In Idrisil across the cold sea, the tundra runs with needled trees, evergreen beneath their snowy sheen, when winter bites and blizzards sweep, till Naya's return a warm relief from winter's long, a summer brief. Beneath the boughs those sun-kissed days, where Northmen's children fooled and played, one boy found a branch of oak, he swung it round until it broke. Thus, the art of the sword first met the legendary sword fighter, Rousseau-Villiet. No man could fight as fierce as that boy. By 18 he made the steel sword his toy, and sparred with the wind to learn the blade from sunrise until the Orloffs bayed. Against all his practice stood no foes to fight, until the arrival of tyrannical blight, as Muson imperial soldiers incurred on Idrisil's borders at their emperor's word. When watchmen first spotted armed marauders interlope across their eastern borders, young Vil and 10 brave men sent out to scout, till caught unaware by fierce battle shouts. Ambushed on all sides by 20 or more, the snow soaked in scarlet gore. But Villiet escaped, lonesome and stained with news for 10 mothers whose sons were slain, and a terrible truth hidden behind his tears: he just killed enough foes to equal his years. He inspired his countrymen to resist the conquest and take arms against the Musan march west. But he fought another war inside of his head. Could he truly love peace, leaving so many dead? So far in his life he proved good at one thing, the despicable science and art of killing. He'd die for his people to end their woes, but all he could do was cast down their foes, which nonetheless made him a right famous sight when his battlefield score matched his inch-measured height. Around their walls Musan forces laid siege in the name of their tyrannical liege, ripped the walls with cannons and rams, and Idrisil's warriors fought their last stand. Villiet blessed his sword for he entered the fray, and to Naya and the moons he prayed that he might be forgiven for the lives he took, and give his cold homeland one last good look. The battle raged on, but didn't last long before ending with a sorrowful song. But one northern warrior managed to escape, and swore revenge for his homeland's rape when he set sail upon a catamaran, swept o'er toward old Cardian lands, where a strong king may hear his plea, and perhaps he might be lent an army. But for then he was solo on that tiny boat upon the cold sea, with a frail dire hope, his eyes grim and his war paint smeared, and as many kills as hairs in his twin braided beard. As the trio continued their ride, Tenold recited the poem aloud thrice daily as practice for his bard's inflection. Walker remarked that the young poet's skills improved markedly from his exposure to worldly inspiration. Villiet loathed it. The sophomoric poet's recitations dredged up deathly memories, slanted with falsehood and myth-making. Words could only understate the reality, no matter how given to hyperbole.
Day by day, Walker, Tennell, and Villiet approached the skyline of the Sorothi Peaks. On the 33rd, 2 weeks from the day they set out from Ulsendor, the three arrived at the foothill town of Archway, where they began the long trek through the Sorothi Peaks. In those arid mountains, Vil shed his coat and doublet, but still he sweltered under the unfamiliar heat. Tennell and Walker suffered far less, for the grand view of the hundreds of massive earth-red cones, needles, mounds, and plateaus served a tremendous distraction from the harsh weather until each night's cool relief. Twice or thrice along their way, Vin Knights stopped and searched the three at military checkpoints. Although a Palazean, a Rentean, and an Idrisili were rare to see together, they had nothing to hide and continued without incident until their arrival in Crossway. The small city, tucked in a flat wide hollow in the mountainside, accommodated the humble trio. There they found an avenue through the travelers' quarter lined with communal facilities, fire pits, water tanks, outhouses, and the like. There, rough drifters, couriers, peddlers, and rest-store drivers all busied and settled under the scarlet sky of early evening. With space found for a small camp of their own, Villiet rested quietly with a sword gripped to his chest. Tennell leaned back on his sleepy reptor and journaled, and Walker prepared gruel over a cooking spit. Before long, one of the travelers passing through the avenue caught Villiet's attention. A woman with a blue reptor in tow, a saber visible from under her travel cloak, with silver tendrils streamed from under her hood, and unmistakable icy eyes. Musum, he thought, by her features, and not just one of the manifold peoples under their thrall. A true-blooded Musan of their fatherland's upper caste. Vil perceived the face of his enemy Otugoso in hers, and seethed at the sight of her, and gripped Eastbane's hilt.
Walker, I thought you told me Musans were unwelcome in this land.
Indeed, for the most part. Why do you ask?
Because I see an armed Musan, and I would rather kill it than let it live.
What? Where? Villiet alighted to his feet and stormed after the woman. Vil drew Eastbane determinedly, the sword that slew 1,000 Musans. The weapon, though mere inches longer than aught, cast all the wider a range of dangerous motion. Straight and pliant, the blade's foredge shone sharp and tapered. Its back edge gave way to a blunted section near the hilt, chipped from parries. The flash of the lengthy razor menaced passers-by and hastened their paces. He trained its point at the woman's back, and he shouted,
"You, Musan, face me!"
Her shoulders shuddered slightly, but she did not turn. She had not assumed the man's voice addressed her.
I said face me! I'll stab a woman in the back!
She ignored the threat no longer. She turned, drew her saber, and struck a combat stance in half a second flat. Her travel cloak disrobe revealed Dusolian armor and Lady Knight stylings. The street crowds reacted with gasps and fearful whispers as they watched the scene unfold. She responded to Villiet.
You're mistaken, warrior. Stay your attack, I'm warning you. Your warning is worthless.
Villiet harried her immediately with crosswise cuts. She dodged back with precision. Vil swung again from skyward down. She sidestepped and parried Eastbane. The spring steel sang an echo of the clash. Walker called out to his friend,
Vil, no, that's no Musan.
But the cry fell on ears deafened by fury. Villiet attacked again, each swipe a nearly lethal blow, his opponent rare and refined enough to avoid them. 3 more times she dodged and offered a riposte that forced him to weave away. Her martial art was unfamiliar to him, but no sooner than he calculated his death blow, that the reason for Walker's warning occurred to him.
You don't fight like a Musan. You don't speak like one. But you look like one.
You don't say? I'm Dusolian, you idiot. My line hasn't been Musan for 300 years. A pair of Roskin soldiers arrived on the scene, spears in hand, at first unsure if they witnessed assault or legal combat. The senior of the two said, Desist at once, or we'll be forced to take action.
No need, good soldiers. This is over. Be on your way, woman.
With caution, she returned her saber to its scabbard, picked up her travel cloak, and made to soothe her reptor, disquieted by the action. The 2 soldiers disengaged, but continued to eye Villiet from afar. The crowd on the avenue sighed with disappointment and relief, and moved along with wide berth from Vil and his companions.
What, Nunaya, were you thinking, friend? I am sorry, Walker. I did not know her apart from my enemy. Oh, don't you go apologizing to me. Say, good Lady Knight, if you please. Lady Knight, I beg your pardon. My friend, well, he needs a lesson in Westland manners. If you please, would you come back and accept his apology?
She stopped, turned, looked first to Walker and then to Villiot, and she saw the slightest shade of shame in his rigid posture. Will his apology involve attempted murder like his street greeting did?
Of course not. Or at least I'd hope not. You see, he's not from around here. You, ever heard of, Rousseau Villiot?
Who?
You know, Blizzard Blade, Eastbane's wielder, a big famous warrior from Idrisil. Well, that's him.
Some killer with a nickname, is he? I'm a knight. I don't deal with his kind.
Come on. This may be my only chance to make him say he's sorry to someone.
She chuckled and calmed herself from the prior fright. The old man's earnestness had tepidly won her over. Fine, if it'll quiet you. She followed Walker back to their camp.
This is our third companion, Tenold.
The young poet glanced up from his book and waved, but then continued feverishly spinning this latest episode into verse.
And this is, well, Vil, what do you have to say for yourself? I am sorry I tried to kill you. I thought you my enemy, and my sword is, thirsty.
Apparently so.
I seek the Empire to do battle. It is all I know, all I am good at. There you have it.
Tenold set down his quill pen and stood, his eyes still locked onto his book, and unsolicited he began to recite his fresh work. Villiot and Nyera stood apart 5 paces, swords drawn, trained at each other's faces, eyes hard, for a fight to the end, each awaited the sign to begin. With furrowed brows the fighters essayed, Villiot's ice wind in each slash, Nyera's song sung by her blade, their lives at their backs they clashed. They traded language of sword styles, feints and dodges and weaves. Nyera alight without her swipes, Vil matched with hoary swings. Her skill left him taken aback, he gripped his hilt and redoubled attacks. Ferocious, the unleashed force caught the Lady Knight surprised at the mercy of Villiot's sword and the razor edge of life. She switched her stance, twirled her saber, swirled it swift, a blade of vapor and deft she deflected each swing he struck, a quick steel dance, all skill, no luck. The duet wore braids versus night crest, arrived at a final rest, each blade dangled o'er opponent's neck, death blows spared, both still drew breath. The quartet rode forth unbroken in search of Sitaponto. Drab Walker, Verdant Tenold, Dark Villiot, and Cerulean Nyera. With their erstwhile destination in reach, the colorfully assorted party had found themselves lost on a wrong turn through the winding mountainside roads. I thought you said this was a shortcut.
I thought it was a shortcut. I guess it's a shortcut to nowhere. I see. I thought that last fork would send us toward Capital Vale, but we should have taken this other fork.
I told you we should have just stayed on the King's Road. Everyone knows it goes straight to the capital.
Hardly straight. You try reading this mess of noodles the Roskins call a map.
This seemed like the right way until we went off to the southeast. I think that bridge we passed under ways back was actually our shortcut.
Sorry everyone, we gotta double back.
Nyera and Villiot shared bemused glances, for they had grown to dislike each other somewhat less with each day spent on the road together. That's when Vil noticed a suspicious shape at the crest of the next bend. It was the silhouette of a mounted Ruskin soldier, ambling slowly and half aimlessly toward them on the road.
Does that man look right to you?
No, Ruskins always patrol in pairs or more. He looks ill. Or drunk.
I'd rather not let a man go in need. A soldier, no less. Wait here, I'll see to him.
The kind huntsman galloped forth a distance to meet the hapless soldier.
You all right, son?
He ascertained the young man's grave condition. He was half-conscious, delirious.
Dad? If you like. Come on, let me help you off your ride and I'll take a look at you. No. Must ride. Need the king.
Mosons attacked my post.
Mosons? Where? When?
On the 22nd.
Yeah. What day is this?
The 25th.
It's been 3 whole days? Ah, Titans, damn it all. The princess. Princess, what's all this about the princess? Why the hell do I have to keep saying it? The Musans have her hostage! You're saying the Empire has attacked Roska? Yes, Did they have guns? Or did they have Dosolian make or Boraki? Well, I don't know! Where are the Musans? I will kill them for you.
Thanks, whoever you are, but I don't know if...
Are they that way? I could write a poem about this. Naya, shut the hell up! Yeah, sheesh. Let the man breathe. Well, thanks for your help. I really ought to get moving. We'll see you safely to your destination, son. Don't you worry.
How did I know he was going to say that? Walker helped Rogan back onto his Raptor, and they all set out toward the capital together.
It seems if I follow that soldier, I will find some Musans to kill.
Maybe a whole war's worth if this all goes as badly as it might.
I hope so. Hope? Pfft, you're a madman, that's for sure. Another thing is sure. This, King of Roska will have a bad day today.